Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Beat Podcast, here recorded live at Vive, Los Angeles, California. I'm Saul Marquez, your host for today's podcast. I have two extraordinary guests today. First, I want to introduce you to Carrie Shaw. She's the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Embodied Labs. We also have the amazing Diana Gelston, Chief Commercial Officer at Best Buy Health. So I'm so excited to have you both here on the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Saul.
Thank you both for joining me. And before we get started, I'd love if you could just give us a little bit about your companies and what you do.
Embodied Labs is an immersive shared experience platform where we transform the way that both professional caregivers and caregivers in their homes are able to first person step into the experiences of those that they care for and then live out the experiences that they're going to face as a caregiver before they happen to them in real life. And this is a company I founded now 7 years ago, coming from a personal experience of caregiving for my mom. And my mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease in her 40s and my teens. And then as I became a young adult in my early 20s, I moved at home and became her primary caregiver in the later stages of Alzheimer's. And that was really what catalyzed me to now have a mission personally and professionally to really enable caregivers everywhere to be more effective and understanding of the experiences of aging and caregiving.
Amazing. What a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So Best Buy Health, yes, that Best Buy is a part of Best Buy. And what we do is we enrich and help save lives through technology and meaningful connections. And Embodied Labs is all about those meaningful connections with people in their homes or wherever they are. We focus on 3 areas. We focus on curating amazing health technology, everything from Oura rings to treadmills. Aging at home, which is really supporting the infrastructure of caregivers and consumers of health in their home to ensure that they're living their fullest, healthiest lives. And then care at home, which is taking acute patients and migrating them from hospital into their home, or those with chronic diseases or in transitional care, and supporting them, connecting them with their provider in a meaningful way that enables them to be at home with their family and their loved ones and their animals and living their best lives and not being stuck in a hospital.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Very impactful. It's such a pleasure to have you both here. All right, so let's get started. Carrie, this first one's for you. How has Embodied Labs learned from working with Best Buy Health over the last 5 years?
Yeah. So we've been partnering with Best Buy Health since 2018 to really bring this embodied experience to their core training. And so as we grew with them to say, how does someone who maybe is in their 20s be able to embody the experiences of the customers that they're serving? How does that play a role in Best Buy Health's goals to provide the best care and service that they can to their end users? And I think this has just been a partnership for us as we've grown as an organization to now serve over 100 different enterprises, from government and academia to senior services, to say, how does working with a leader like Best Buy and Health really enable us to imagine what's possible to scale? We're all aging here in the United States, globally, and I think their strategic focus to enable care at home for everyone, that's how we're going to be able to sustain and think about quality of life for all of us, ourselves, our parents, our hopefully grandparents. And yeah, just working together has been a compliment for us to both find ways forward to see that vision through.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Carrie. And Diana, why has Embodied Labs training been a differentiator for Best Buy Health?
So as you approach trying to enable care at home for everybody, and that's what we strive to do every day, we need tools. We need the people who go either across the threshold into people's homes, our Geek Squad, on their health train, to have the sensitivity and to actively be empathetic to helping people confident about the technology that they're using. So imagine a new Geek squad agent who's been certified in Embodied Labs, walking across the threshold into somebody's home and understanding that maybe an active aging person is not as adept at using technology. How do I ensure that I can approach that person, that I can meet them where they are in their home, but also meet them where they are in terms of their skill set? Understand that maybe they have some arthritic issues. Maybe they have some problems being able to use the technology because they don't have the moisture in their fingertips anymore to use the technology. Having that empathy training and actively using it when teaching people how to use technology is vital to our success and vital to the stickiness of that consumer on a product and their adherence to any type of regimen that they're put on from their provider. And it's just been a huge differentiator for us.
Wow, that's really great. And it's being here in the room with you guys. I get the partnership is palpable. I could see that there's a really nice relationship, a partnership here, and really just it makes a difference. The way that when somebody comes into your home, or really when somebody talks to you, you feel what they feel. And so when you have that empathy that you mentioned, Diane, it's critical to making a difference in their lives. What specific benefits have you seen?
So take a brand new person coming into Best Buy or Best Buy Health. Mm-hmm. And they're coming off the street. They know the big Best Buy big blue box, but they don't know necessarily that they're in healthcare, but they're excited about that opportunity to work into healthcare. But how do you get them to understand and walk in the footprint of the person who is on the receiving end of that care, or the receiving end of aging to their best and fullest life? Well, leveraging the amazing Embodied Lab suite of solutions that they have, we can bring that person up to speed almost instantaneously to be super successful in making those connections. And in fact, I've done ride-alongs with our Geek Squad. And I have to tell you that the training that has been delivered has been vitally improved to such a great experience that one of the people, the active aging patients or people in their homes, said to me, wow, it felt like my grandchild was teaching me how to use this technology. And I think that is incredibly powerful.
Wow.
Also, that the Embodied Labs training is given and delivered to our caring centers. So every time somebody picks up a call, when somebody presses a button, maybe there's a loneliness issue, maybe there's a food insecurity issue, having that person on the other end of the line who can speak and actively be empathetic to who they're listening to, and it's very different listening to and trying to discern what's happening to that person. Having Embodied Labs as a part of that solution to help them feel confident in answering those questions for that person in their home is so important to us, and it's been a huge differentiator.
And I think about Embodied Labs' core value. Why are we really focused on immersive experiences and shared immersive learning? And so when you are able to embody and actually walk in the shoes or become that person and walk in their journey, you're having a lived experience. And the science of immersive experience says that we're recording that as a memory. And we know that means we're going to remember that in a different way than a traditional training method. So when I've talked to some of the people that work in the call center or some of the sales representatives or Geek Squad, and they'll say, when we went through that experience of embodying Frank, who was experiencing social isolation, and then we were all talking about it, some people were crying. They had tears in their eyes, and they could tell me everything that happened in that training. And how often are you starting a new job and getting all of the things thrown at you that can be overwhelming, and you can come out of that 3 months, 6 months, years later and say, I am immersed myself in Frank's experience, and I remember what it was like to feel isolated or to struggle or to feel cared for. It's about It's a technology that really enables us to do more than what's been possible.
Carrie, I couldn't agree more. One of our clinicians who had gone through the Embodied Labs training just had a complete mind shift in how they were going to deliver care, because they saw that they were being a little bit unempathetic to what that patient was experiencing on the other end, and how they were going to use technology and how they were going to engage their caregiver. And Embodied Labs had moved that clinician to really rethink how they were practicing medicine and changing all that they had learned for decades of being a clinician and prescribing certain therapies, to changing how they were delivering their message, how they were coaching their patient on an approach to their therapy, and found them just so much closer to that patient because they had gone through the training.
I think about that story and then the ones you shared about the Geek Squad, and in listening to so many of the panels at Vive, especially in what will enable success in hospital at home or delivering care in the home where 90% of us want to be. It's going to take a cultural transformation. And so having tools in our toolbox that can reach the clinician and fundamentally change decades of how they approach their practice, and also reach someone just starting their career on the Geek Squad or in a caring center, to me, that's just so exciting, because it speaks to how we might actually scale the human-centered side of care.
Agreed. And if you think about the shift that occurs, moving a patient from being inside the walls of a hospital into home, or somebody who's had COPD recently diagnosed and they're being monitored a certain way for their chronic disease, how transactional education has been is you're learning a bunch of things about a bunch of topics at once and just digesting that in a way that's not repeatable. But when you really sit through Embodied Labs' training, you have a completely different experience, because you're understanding that this patient's receiving their insights from you in a very different way. And it becomes less of that transaction and more of an embracing of that patient or that person or that consumer in their home to be really successful and live their healthiest lives they can.
Yeah, it gives a vocabulary, a visual vocabulary and an experiential vocabulary that both the clinician, the provider, the family member, and the patient can all be unified around.
Great examples and a fantastic way to scale care. It's just fantastic to hear these examples. How do your values and strategic priorities come to life with the Embodied Labs immersive training technology?
I've really appreciated working together, and I think at the center of both of our companies, we value empathy. We value things that are similar. I think, Diana, I would love to hear you speak to just where you've seen this complement and maybe accelerate some of the Best Buy Health team goals.
Sure. I always start with the person and work backwards. Then, as do we at Best Buy Health, in terms of really understanding how a person is experiencing their health journey, wherever they are, in their home, in their car, living their best life. And we also reflect upon that caregiver that is supporting a person in their journey, as you indicated, you and your mom's story. And in terms of the values, empathy is at the core, one of Best Buy's core values. But Embodied Labs is taking empathy to another level. You can say you walk in somebody's shoes. You can say you start with a patient and work backwards, or person and work backwards. But until you can connect with a person at their level of where they are and their health journey, you're not really making that connection. This connection between our two companies makes that, or solidifies that actionable empathy in a way that is so unique and experiential to that person at home or person wherever, so they can be really successful and as healthy as they can be.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And how do you see the Best Buy Health and Embodied Labs work transforming and enabling people everywhere to age in their homes successfully?
I think back to why I started Embodied Labs, and I was a family member. I was the youngest daughter of 3 and providing care alongside my dad to my mom when she was going through just a hard journey at the end of her early onset Alzheimer's disease. And it took me years. Her journey wasn't short. It was probably spanned about 15 years. And I wish that I could have made connections to meet her where she was at sooner. And this company that we've built really speaks to that mission. And I think the partnership with Best Buy Health gives me that hope and inspiration and meaning just to think about what's possible to help people that maybe are in the shoes I was in, or where my mom or my dad was, overcome those barriers faster and get to focus on what's wonderful about life, even when we're going through hard journeys like having Alzheimer's disease or managing the good and the bad that comes with the human experience.
Carrie, I love that. I think, again, I have a mother who's living alone at almost 90 years old. And yes, she just stopped pickleball, thank goodness. But she is definitely aging and aging well, thank goodness. And I unfortunately had the opportunity to, before Embodied Labs, try to train my mother on how to use her iPhone, which was quite a disaster. The ability for us to see more clearly the people who are right in front of us and enable them to be successful and to be healthy is critical. And that's what our partnership does together, is your education of our teams to reach people like my mom is super important for us to appreciate people where they are, who they are, and respect respect their journey. Also, I just see a huge opportunity for us to continue to support the caregiver, because the caregiver is vital to the success of that person in their home. And there are so many ways that this connection does enable that to happen. So we're thrilled about it.
Thank you both for sharing that. I'm very excited, and I know the listeners are also very excited about a future of care in the home that is empathetic and it's scalable, something that is a concern, right? How do we do this? I'm inspired today by our conversation, and I want to leave you guys with one last thing. What call to action would you leave our listeners with as we conclude today's podcast?
Something that's unique and universal to all of us is that right now, every single one of us is aging. So we all have a job and a role to play in building the world that we want to age into. So my call to action would be for all of the listeners to think about, where do they want to be in 10, 20, 50, 100 years, and how can they help build that world?
Yes, certainly. That is amazingly aspirational. And I think our call to action is to help support all those people who can live their best lives by being more deliberate and thoughtful and actionably empathetic, so that we can all just live healthier, hopefully live longer, and do so meeting people where they are.
Amazing. Diana, Carrie, thank you both so much for being on our podcast today. It's been great.
Thanks for having us.